Hey, g'day guys. I'm going to run you through how to properly measure your piston and cylinder for a top end rebuild for a two-stroke, although this applies to any engine really, but especially one where you can reuse the cylinder for quite a few pistons, like any modern Nicosol coated cylinder. So this is from my 2016 KTM 300, unknown hours. However, it does have the original piston in it. I noticed some piston slap, and I pulled the cylinder head to machine out the squish band closer, and I'll do a separate video on how to do that exactly and your measurements. But I pulled that off and I noticed the piston had significant rock back and forth like that. So I pulled the cylinder and cleaned everything up, and we're going to do some measurements to make sure this cylinder is good to reuse and check what size of piston to order. So a couple of tools you'll need a snap gauge or a dial bore gauge, which you set up to the correct dimension using gauge blocks. But if you own a dial bore gauge, a good one, you probably don't need me to tell you how to do this. So this is for people who use a snap gauge and a micrometer. Don't try and use a vernier caliper. They're not accurate enough for measuring inside diameters. You can kind of get away with them from outside, but definitely not for inside. You won't get consistent results, even though they got enough digits on the display, but that doesn't mean they can measure it to within a micron. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure two different places on the cylinder. We're going to measure the top and the bottom, fore, aft, left and right. The book says to measure 3. There's really no point. So first step, you want to inspect your bore, everything clean, and make sure there's no obvious scratches or anything in the bore. This bore looks fantastic. There's nothing in there basically. So we're going to take our snap gauge, and with these you got to remember this is a Starrett number 579-E. If you're going to buy these, either buy the Starretts or the Mitutoyos. Don't buy an off-brand. So with these, you got to remember that you control the telescope lock with that end knob, but it's not a very strong lock. If I lock that down, I can collapse it. So you got to be fairly careful with them, and you got to be consistent. You put the micrometer, put the snap gauge in loose, tilt it slightly off center, off horizontal, I should say, so that it's a shorter measurement. We close the dial till it's closed quite firmly, and then we drag it up through the bore, and that will crush the snap gauge to the minimum dimension that the snap gauge has to pull through. Don't worry about scratching the bore. These are hardened and ground, and Nicosol is basically the hardest thing next to diamond almost, so don't worry about dragging it through the bore. You won't scratch it. And then we want to just lightly touch our micrometer anvils to the snap gauge. You do not want to crush the snap gauge down. It's just very light dragging. So here we're at 2.835, 2.8351. 2.8351. Two point 8.354. So no, there wasn't more wear, but the piston hardly touches here. So let's see that again. So we had 2.8354. And we have 2.835, just over 3. That's close, that's pretty consistent. Let's go 3.5, split the difference. So I'll do the other end and then catch you back. Okay, so here's what we ended up with. So the size 1 maximum is 2.83511. We are just on the top side of that. So on our skirt, we've got 2.8352, so we're a tenth above, and transversely we're, sorry, 4.5, we're right on that limit maximum. So if you're right on the upper limit of the size 1 cylinder maximum, it's best to go to size 2, because it's not like it jumps straight to size 2, there's overlap here. So the size 1 maximum of is 2.83511, but the size 2 minimum is 2.83464. And we don't have any measurement that's less than that. So we have 2.835, 2.835, 2.835, 2.835. We have nothing in the 4s. So we're comfortably in the size 2 zone, and the maximum is 2.83562. And we are even our largest measurement, which is 2.83535. We're still a couple of tenths lower than that. So we're good. Our cylinder's okay. We're in a size 2, and actually, if you look on the skirt, usually it should be cast somewhere into this cylinder that tells you what size nominally this cylinder is. You probably can't make that out because it's been faded by the cleaning solution I used, but that says size 2. So this is actually a size 2 cylinder from factory. So it hasn't really moved, which makes sense. So that's our cylinder. So we're going to want a size 2 piston. And just to put this into metric, if we say that our cylinder bore is 2.8351, say, or just let's say 8352, that's kind of an average. That's 2.8352 times 25.4, that's 72.014 millimeters. So we're going to be looking for 50 microns clearance. So we're going to be looking for a piston that's 71.96 millimeters. Okay, that's the number we're looking for our replacement piston.